Yo, what up, everyone? Welcome to the Portal Room. It's your boy Paul, and co-hosting as always, we got my boy Christian. Say what's up, Christian. How's it going, man?
What's up, everybody? Hey, Paul, how are you? It's good to see you. Glad to be here.
It's been a minute, but we're ready to get right back into it. Tonight, it's gonna be a fun one. We got our homies from Obliterate the Construct. So we got Anthony and we got Boutaina, which I just finally accomplished her name pronunciation. So without further ado, welcome, guys. How's it going?
Hi, how are you?
Doing very well. Thank you for having us. Excited.
Thank you for having
Yeah,
us.
yeah.
And
Let's
hi,
get into it, guys. Awesome. Let's get into it. So, kind of the way we were talking before the show, we're going to talk about, I guess, individually how you guys got interested into the topic, researching it, and any personal experiences that you've had. So, I do want to start off with Anthony. So, Anthony, can you kind of give us the origins and then go from there with maybe sliding that into some of your experiences, and then we can kind of just free flow it from there.
Sure. And if I start going too long, we can definitely alternate because sometimes the origin stories are pretty long. So you let us
for
know.
Sure. Yeah, for sure.
Cool. So yeah, my background, I came to this country as a first generation immigrant from Lebanon when I was 6 years old. Family fled a post-war scenario over there. And, we started from scratch over here. I have two siblings. We were raised super Catholic. Very conservative, very strict. I was an altar boy growing up. I was all in on that religion. I appreciated most like the mystical and supernatural parts of the faith. And as I got older, especially once I got into college and left home, got out of my like most immediate family circles and that environment, started really expanding my horizons more, meeting people from different religions, actually studying international relations as my undergrad major. That exposed me to all sorts of new ideologies, new religions. And I started seeing like the similarities in so many of them, and really, how no different many of us are from each other. And how every religion had their own mystical and supernatural experiences as well. And from there, I was always kind of interested in the anomalous and the mystical, generally speaking, but I never really dove into it. I did have a few like sleep paralysis experiences in my 20s, very terrifying. Two of them involved actual entities manifesting in my bedroom next to me. I would best describe them as like jinn type entities or genie type entities.
Yeah, can we maybe get into that? Like, let's maybe dial back for a second. That sounds
Sure.
very interesting. So, like, was this like sleep paralysis? Like, you just straight up sleep paralysis, or maybe did you have some mushrooms earlier in the day? Like, give some context here.
No. This was like before I ever dabbled in psychedelics, even before I smoked weed. The first time it happened, I was in college in my bedroom, in my dorm room, freshman year. And I had been in like my first serious relationship. And I was at that point, I was still kind of like, it was my last year of being religious in the Catholic sense. So I still had a lot of shame and guilt of being in this like, premarital sexual relationship, and kind of keeping things from my parents. So one of these nights, probably on lack of sleep, like studying and things like that, I woke up in the middle of the night in my bunk bed in my dorm room. I had a roommate, and I start seeing like I start feeling like this extreme terror that I'd never felt before. And I immediately start associating it with like this biblical notion of evil. And I wasn't aware where it was coming from, like that the sense or the fear or the emotions. And then as it kept escalating, and I couldn't move, my body was paralyzed. I could just see, and I could kind of look around with my eyes. And I wear contact lenses, so at night I take them off when I sleep. So when I opened my eyes, the room was just as blurry as it usually is with my eyesight without my contact lenses. So I knew I was awake and like looking with my actual eyes, not a dream. And I start seeing like what looks like dark smoke or fog coming out from under the crease of the doorway into the dorm room. And it kind of like moved along the floor. And then once it got next to my bunk bed right under me, it started forming into this like kind of conic shape, wider at the top and thin at the bottom. And like above the height of my bunk bed, almost to the ceiling. So probably like 7 feet in height. And I saw like 2 glowing eyes where a face would be. And the fear and terror just like maxed out, like to the extremes. And I didn't know what to do. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak even. And the last thing I thought I could do was pray. And I just started like trying to pray this thing away. And that's the last thing I remember before falling asleep and just finally waking up in the morning. And it felt like forever, like just being stuck in that state. The next morning I woke up. I had no exposure to any of this stuff at this stage of my life, any of the anomalous things. So I just like Googled what this could be. I'd never even heard of the term sleep paralysis. And of course, the first thing you find is like the standard Western medical definitions and the pathological definitions of sleep paralysis and what's happening and the prosaic stuff. So, I mean, I just associated with like something from my psyche because of the shame and guilt I felt manifesting in this way. And like me getting something that I deserve, basically. So that's what that was like. And then it repeated.
That was one incident though, right? Is what you're saying. That was like kind of the first one, and then you had another after. Okay.
Yeah,
okay,
it repeated about a year later, back at my parents' house, like one summer, in my bedroom, and the exact same series of events, the exact same type of entity. At that point, I had been even less religious, but still I felt like the last thing I could do and the last thing I had to do was try to pray. And that's what I did. And eventually, same thing. Eventually I fall asleep again. The third time it happened was at a different house, now after college, like the year after college. And I had the same feelings start with the same physical paralysis. And I totally expected the same entity to come out from under the door. So I'm looking towards the doorway, and instead I see like the hallway light behind the door is on, and I see it like shining from under the doorway. And then I see like what looks like little silhouettes just like scurrying back and forth against the light. And I mean, I freak out. And that's the last thing I remember in that case. And that was the last time I had 3 like entity type sleep paralysis encounters. I mean, I think it's a good place to pause, and then I can let Boutaina go from here. But that's kind of, sometimes I don't talk about that as part of my early stages of these experiences. But I mean, maybe it is relevant. I don't know. I think it could be.
I think it's funny, right, Christian? We've talked about this, like the UFO destiny. Like there's always like an early stage of like some like liminal state or paranormal experience, and then later in life you're like, oh yeah, that totally connected to like this whole like interest and this whole trauma, whatever the heck is happening here. So no, I think it's relevant, definitely. Go ahead, Christian.
Yeah, I was going to say that's very intense, Anthony. That's an intense like experience to kind of break the wall down to begin with, right?
Yeah.
So, I felt that. You know what I mean? I'm sure a lot of us do who are actually in the chat right now. We've got a lot of experiencers that are here that felt that. So thank you for laying that out for us. I know it's not always easy to go back into that. You know what I mean? So we appreciate you, brother. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Well, let's introduce Boutaina here. It's a pleasure to meet you formally, both of you actually. I'd love to also, I know Paul and myself would love to hear like your kind of origin story as well about your first initial experience that, kind of created this UFO destiny, as Paul likes to say.
So I'm originally Moroccan, born and raised. Can you hear me well, by the way? Okay, perfect. Originally Moroccan, born and raised, then moved to the States when I was 10. Naturally, my family on both sides is very intuitive. And on my dad's side, there's like a lot of heavy magic, like just they never stopped practicing. And it dates back in lineages. So it like really runs in the blood. So I just always had premonition dreams, and I was always just very sensitive to people's energy. I could read them. I could just know how they feel. I always felt like I was responsible for people's feelings, and they always seemed so heavy. Like the world seemed really dark for whatever reason. I couldn't understand why. And I could sense, because my culture is Muslim, and so there's like a lot of jinns, for example. And so I could just sense around specific holidays, sometimes like there would be heavier energies around than usual. Or if I were to go to like, it's just like nighttime was like very sensitive. I could just sense it. And I knew that like everyone was somewhat aware of it because it's in the culture, but I just kind of gaslit myself. Like, what am I going to tell myself? And then it wasn't until later that I realized that I was actually neurodivergent and I had ADHD and all of that. So naturally you're more susceptible to energy and naturally all of that. So I actually, same as Anthony, I don't really like to talk about it. And it's interesting that we're talking about it tonight because I used to have sleep paralysis too back in high school. But for me, I never really saw any smoke or anything. I would just wake up and for like minutes, I would just be stuck in my body, like just looking. And sometimes there would be a dark entity that appeared and I would feel kind of scared, but it never touched me, never hurt me or anything. It was just more of like, I woke up before my body woke up. So I was just kind of always the observer. And sometimes I would sit there for long periods of time. And it was more prevalent if I had like smoked the night before, or if I took anything to like sleep, because I had insomnia a lot and depression. So if I took anything to help me, then I was more likely to not my body like match my awakening. So fast forward, while all of this was happening, I started dabbling in psychedelics. And that's kind of when everything really started opening up, in that my first experiences were with LSD, and I would walk around my mind and I would see nature and everything was like moving and talking to me. And people were like having like seeing color, having fun. And I was like having epiphanies, like lifelong epiphanies, like this is energy. Oh my God, this is all powered by energy. This is that. But the one thing that really opened me up to this entire UFO world was this one time. I was always like, they must exist. I mean, come on, we would be very selfish to like not have, it's just like, how narcissistic are we that we think we're the only ones that exist? Come on, given like all of the creations on Earth alone. So I'm hotboxing the car with one of my friends. Okay. Like I'm like deep in my pothead era, and we're hotboxing this car. Like you can't really see anything outside, but enough to like, if the cops showed up, like you could see it. And we are in Arlington, specifically in this neighborhood called Roslyn. So it's a very corporate neighborhood, and it's where we were. It's like a lot of townhouses. So a lot of like activity going on, and DC is like right there. Right. And I look up and I just see a UFO. And I'm like, no, because like I must be really high that I'm like making this up. So I hit him and I'm like, do you see this? And I'm thinking he's going to gaslight me, or he's going to be like, you're crazy or whatever. And he looks out and he's like, yeah, it's that. And we're both just looking at each other. And at this point, we were like actually scared, because like, what are we looking at? And like, I'm like, if we're looking at it, are other people like looking at this? Because it was like right on top of the townhouses. Like this is so close that you can't ignore.
What did it look like, by the way?
it looked like your stereotypical saucer. And I've seen a lot of I've seen a lot of UFOs at this point, like with my third eye. It's not, this is like your stereotypical, like what you would see usually and think that a saucer is. Fast forward, when I really started opening myself up and speaking to the blue avians, is when they told me that that experience actually was not real, in that the UFO that I had seen that first time was actually a placed memory that they put inside of my brain to help me awaken and go down that rabbit hole, because otherwise I wouldn't have. And so after that experience, I started going down the rabbit hole of being on Reddit and whatnot. But that was like the opening for me with UFOs. And I just kind of gaslit myself for years after that. Like, no way I saw that. It must have been just really hot.
Do you want to explain a bit about the blue avians, or you can't just drop that on the audience and just move on?
I've had a lot of contact with a lot of beings. I'm very fortunate across the spectrum. And when I was first waking up, I had some very interesting experiences where, like, what we would consider the Nephilims, like, showed up in my third eye. I saw like a bunch of other beings. But when I really started to open myself up, and like learn to work with my body in that opening up my body to new and higher frequencies and holding frequencies, I would see them. So at first, this one being called Kai showed itself to me, and she was a she, and she was a blue avian, and she was so high frequency. She said that, like, they didn't exist in a physical realm. They were like spiritual beings. And she was working with me specifically. There were other beings with her, but she was directly in contact with me. She would have me listen to YouTube videos, specific frequencies, 1082, whatnot. And it's almost like a monotone, because you can't find something longer than a minute or so with the stuff. And she would have me listen to it repeatedly and go into meditations where I am like holding really high frequency. And I would be on this couch and I couldn't hold it for like 5 minutes or 10 minutes because it was so high, and I would pass out. And I'd get back up and I would have to drink a lot of water and potassium and all of that. And they would tell me how to eat and what to eat and how to exercise and all of that to open my body up. And that's when I met this man called Jim Garrison from New Paradigm Institute. And formerly, yeah. And he, I walked into his office because I'm in DC, and I had a meeting with him and everything. And I started to tell him my experiences. And then I started to channel this being Kai. And that's when he was like, I told him about the UFO experience before I channeled her. And he was like, actually, so like, what was that about? Like the experience that she's talking about, because at this point she's channeling through me. So my consciousness is sitting on the sideline. She's the driver and I'm like the passenger when you're channeling. And she was like, that's when it came out that was not a real experience that I had, that she was the one that placed that memory. Yeah. And then fast forward, I found out that she was actually like a fragment of my oversoul that was actually a blue avian and came back to contact me and help me through this experience, which was wild. It was like a whole year worth of just dissecting this. So.
But I think her story is important in that sense, because and you can talk more on this, but it shows how it's important when you first have an experience to not throw all your assumptions and expectations onto it of what it is, even if these beings maybe tell you sometimes who and what they are. But oftentimes they don't. And it's just, you kind of making an assumption or an educated guess, or you talk to people and they throw their overlays on top of you, and then you make a guess on what they are. And then maybe in the future something happens and you start changing that opinion and that formulation. So in my opinion, it's always best to just hold these lightly in terms of trying to really use your logical mind on what is happening, and just kind of go with the flow and keep an open mind is really important.
Yeah,
I'd agree with that. Totally.
Very nuanced.
Yeah, I was gonna. No, please go ahead.
I just wanted to add, I've had at this point thousands of experiences because I was living, here, but also in different realms and contacting different beings and vice versa, that it's very important to realize that your mind is like a computer. And when you have these data points, it's going to try to put a picture together. And just like Anthony said, like, it's okay that you got a picture. Just keep in mind that the picture could translate to something else down the line once you have a new data point. So just recommend that you write down these experiences because you can come back with a new lens. Because I used to think it was definite. And then slowly I was like, no, it's not what I thought it was. Because it builds off, because it's trying to like slowly introduce you to a new understanding and a new way of perceiving reality.
I would really recommend, like, if anyone's really interested in pursuing that line of inquiry into these phenomena, is to look into teachings and traditions around indigenous peoples and their worldviews and paradigms and shamanic traditions, and even like certain mystical traditions, from Sufism to Buddhism, to like Hinduism and Vedanta. Like these notions of non-duality and trying to not automatically turn everything into a binary, like it's got to be this, or it's got to be something happening external to me and not internal. Oftentimes these are the things that get completely, to use our name, obliterated in these experiences. So keep an open mind and hold things lightly.
And
absolutely.
I want to add, someone in the comments had said that it is very important to put your mind in the back seat. Absolutely. When these experiences are coming through, it served me best to just, because your logical mind is used to a certain structure and a certain way of thinking and being. And what these experiences do, again, obliterate, is it shatters your perception of reality. That's what it's supposed to do. And it's supposed to help you see a new thing. So yeah, like definitely don't try to use your logical mind if possible, but of course it's going to come in. So if it's telling you and it's assigning it a certain meaning, absolutely fine. That's what your mind is going to do. But like, make sure that you're not stuck in a box. That's all.
Yeah.
Keep it a circle.
That's a very great perspective to have. I think that's very nuanced. Actually had wrote something similar to that the other day, in terms of how as humans we recognize patterns throughout our life, and sometimes whenever something breaks that pattern, right, or that thought process, it kind of breaks like the fucking matrix basically for you. And then you have to like reanalyze like the scenario. You're like, okay, like what is the metaphor, or like what is this phenomena trying to tell me, right? So I think what Anthony was saying about kind of looking into some of like more of the indigenous types of like shamanic teachings and stuff like that, I think there's actually a lot of value in that. And Christian, you can kind of expand on that. I know we talk about this stuff all the time, so
yeah, of course. No, I agree. You know, Paul, that I'm under the firm belief that most of our history has been erased or changed in a lot of ways. And that it is through the old stories of the oral tradition where we actually receive the real information from our ancestors, let alone our sense memory that lives in us through our bodies. So a lot of that, like, I feel like, every individual that does live now, right? They were lucky enough to have their ancestors survive to get to where they are right now. So all of that lives in and through them to this very point now. It's just a matter of accessing it, right? And it sounds like through there's a lot of different methods of like accessing this in a lot of ways, but it sounds like, is it Boutaina? Is that how you say it?
Boutaina, yeah.
Boutaina, yeah. It sounds like that. That really happened for you. It really opened up in a lot of ways. And what you explained also too, which I think is very important as well, is that writing down the experience and coming back to it once you get another perspective, because I believe that's how actual true disclosure works. That is the formula. And that's when experiencers come together, they relay the experience, and it allows other data points from other fractals, if you want to call it that, right, of the higher consciousness to come together to form the bigger picture as a whole. So that's disclosure. So what you said is extremely important for experiencers to do. So I'd say write that down, guys, for sure.
I also want to add something that helped me was recording myself as I'm going through these experiences, because a lot of it is happening in your mind. So I would just go ahead and speak, like I would just record myself saying things, because sometimes you don't remember that you're going through that because you're in that moment, or that specific perspective going through it is not going to be the same perspective after the experience, right? Because after the experience, you're reflecting on the experience that you just had. So that helped me. And another thing about our ancestors, as I was waking up, I realized that I know they say like DNA, but like we really don't understand our DNA, and like that we are everything from the beginning of history up to this point. The entire combination of people that had to come together and survive, and most of them survived. They did not live for us to get here. And these generations, I mean, we just recently started living. Like most of the world is still trying to survive. This high frequency thing that we're going through, right? Like removing ourselves from density. We're not escaping our bodies and going somewhere new. That's not what's going to happen. I'm sorry, guys. Like that's not what the ascension process is about, if you thought it was. What it's about is releasing the density that we inherited from our ancestors, the pain, right? Like, why are we afraid of snakes naturally? I've never encountered a snake that bit me, but I was born afraid of snakes, right? So a lot of these fears and the scarcity mindset and like the fact that you got to go grind and all of that. Yes, the world tells you, but like we inherited that in our genetics. And so it is our job to not carry that anymore, you know, the trauma. It's our job to heal ourselves, but you don't have to do it alone, right? And part of talking about these experiences and your fears and everything, vulnerability is actually a strength, not a weakness. It's putting yourself out there, and other people are like, oh, I'm not alone. You know what? I don't have to perform anymore. So I just wanted to say that. And they were coming through a lot, like whispering, like, as dead people do.
Yeah. And yeah, that's great. And regarding the density of this experience and being here, and this kind of fallacy we can fall into with these transcendence narratives. We just interviewed a friend of mine who will be releasing soon. That interview is Dr. Sean S. Bjorn Hargens from the California Institute of Human Sciences. And he's doing amazing work out there. He's running this super experiencer study. His whole approach is called integral studies, and he's trying to create this like very meta wide approach to studying anomalous phenomena. But when we spoke with him, he got into the concept of subtle bodies and subtle energies, and how like our goal in his approach is not to transcend the physical. Our goal is to like reshape and reconfigure and rebalance the harmony in between our various subtle bodies, to allow us to access the less physical subtle bodies that allow us to tap into these other realms and access these capacities like psi capacities and these collective memories in possibly in these Akashic realms or in the field, the substrate of consciousness, that the goal is to actually like form this new harmonic body that is not just purely this physical body.
Yeah, a combination of the form and the formless.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I mean, so well, let's kind of dial back like a little bit here on the experiences now. Kind of, I think would be a good time, since we're at the halfway point. How did you two kind of formulate the idea around making the show, and I guess, you know, actually putting in the effort to interview experiencers, researchers, scientists, all that good stuff. So
Sure.
if you guys want to start there, that'd be great. I'm just curious to know, because I think it's important, the things that you guys are doing and what we're trying to do, right? Let's just like highlight real experiences. At the end of the day, I think a lot of this topic gets jumbled up in the politics, which is fine, right? But we know how dicey that could get, especially on the world of UFO Twitter and Reddit and other crazy places. So yeah, I'm just curious to know what the whole origin of that, how that got started. So yeah.
I mean, we probably both have like slightly different reasons for how the convictions kind of arose, and then we kind of met and it blossomed into this. But I can tell mine, and if yours differs, please do. I mean,
does. Mine does.
Yeah. So I mean, for me, yes, for me, like my professional background after college was open source intelligence. So that's like media and social media analysis for intelligence purposes. And I was working for government contractors, and we were contracting out to various government agencies, mostly focusing on foreign developments and foreign geopolitical and like counterterrorism and security issues, but also working with like U.S. embassies in other countries, as well as some commercial clients that we had in the U.S. with different topical interests. And what my job was essentially was to look at the narratives in the media and on social media around the areas of interest for these customers and clients, and to see how like they would have a mission, and our purpose would be to identify, monitor, collect, track, and analyze these narratives in media and social media, and then just give all this information to these clients and customers. And then basically they would use it to improve their strategic awareness on a topic. And in some cases, it's to like overcome adversarial narratives to counter them. Now, that's not too different from what we would call propaganda in other countries. So that's an important thing to remember. And we call it public affairs oftentimes in the US government. Like every government department, every agency has a public affairs section. We know, for example, like Susan Goff with Aero and the DoD, she's their public affairs person. She's their spokesperson. So that is who our customers and clients were for the most part at these embassies, and in some cases like in Afghanistan and Iraq with NATO. So I was doing that and getting like the firsthand look at how, if I can curse here, like how fucked up the depiction of world events would be from the US perspective compared to what I was seeing in international media and social media. So once I got into these topics, the UFO topic and the anomalous, and I started to understand how much of a role disinformation had played over the decades on this topic, it became this like instant mesh. Like, I know how this works. I've seen it done. I see it done constantly geopolitically. And this is essentially like a reshaping of reality that has taken place against the public, especially the American public, by our own, by pieces of our own government. Again, not the whole government. Most of them have no idea. And that really motivated me. And that was like one of my main motivating factors that eventually led me to want to start this podcast, was to try to show people that a lot of their reality, a lot of their conceptions and assumptions around these topics have been shaped for them. And in some cases shaped by them unknowingly, because they're just in these echo chambers, they're in these narratives, and they're self-fulfilling oftentimes, and cyclical. So I wanted to create something that would start to break down the barriers that have been put up and we have put up in between each other to actually communicate authentically around these amazing, in most cases, re-enchanting experiences that reshape the way we look at the world, and in my opinion, give us a viewpoint into this greater reality. So that's my motivating factor for
it. Mine's different.
That was great. No, that was really great. And I kind of didn't. Yeah, it is really grounded, and I actually respect the work you had done previously, or even if you're still doing it. But Yeah, that's
I'm
a lot, and
currently
I can kind of
unemployed. I'm not still doing it. I'm unemployed.
all good, but I can see like when you're describing the layers, right, like of obfuscation and all this other BS that comes around managing information, right, especially around this topic. It's I have a lot of respect for that, especially because there's just so much with this topic that just gets jumbled into nonsense. And it's kind of like what I said earlier, like outside of like the political stuff, I kind of get bored a lot of times. So I'm glad that, you know, kind of just your whole title of your show, right? Obliterate the Construct. I think that really defines really what your mission statement is. So I really appreciate that. But yeah, if you want to tell yours next, Boutaina, that'd be great. That'd be great.
Yes. Okay. So mine is different. I went down the rabbit hole of UFOs. We all know, like, Reddit/UFO, right? So I went down that rabbit hole. Some people were questioning whatever. And then I had the experiences, right? So I was like, yeah, I think they exist, whatever. And I had the experiences. And one of my experiences at the beginning when I first opened up was I got to a threshold where I was now emerging with my higher self, right? So usually, like, the average person is disconnected from their higher self because there's that just layer where you're not aware just yet. It exists, but you're not aware. So I merged. And as soon as I merged, it was crazy. I was now looking at the CIA, PSYOP operations. I was now like looking at being shape-shifting. I was like, oh my God, the veil fell. Like, and I started to get approached by all of these beings. I went from contacting deities and being trained by them, well, them contacting me, I didn't contact them, to now actually experiencing like this crazy world, which I felt like, oh my God, like I can see it, I can feel it. We've been lied to. We've been lied to about their existence. We've been lied to about the deals that have happened with them, et cetera, et cetera. So to me, I didn't have any support really until I had like met Anthony and other people while I was an experiencer. I was just alone in these experiences. And I was like, I know I'm not going crazy, but how do I talk to an average person about this? Like, what am I supposed to say? Like, there are reptilians and people are shape-shifting and I've seen it. Like what am I supposed to say? What?
You're like you don't want to be that lady on the airplane, right?
Yes,
You know what I
yes.
mean? Like,
And
that's a reptilian over there.
And the thing is, like, these guys are the least of our problems. How do I say that? Like, that is the least concerning thing that we need. Like, how am I supposed to say they like map out consciousness and there's technology and et cetera, et cetera. And like, I've seen clones and like, I can, you know, look at I can remote view, technically sense, et cetera, et cetera. So for me, I had sat down with the Light Council and I had sat down with these Egyptian deities that I was working with, these gods and goddesses that trained me, and my higher self and my team. And it became very clear that I needed to start a podcast with him specifically. That was the conclusion we came to. This is the time we need to do the podcast. And I let him know. And for me, it was about letting other experiences know that they are not alone in their experiences. And it was like my calling to like now start gathering people. Like, I'm just going to say my stories. I'm going to share them. I'm going to share my truth. And whatever comes out of it, comes out of it. So it's really just me sitting here not being afraid of the consequences. I did not care what my employer thought. I didn't care what my family thought, my friends, anybody. My life fell apart. Everything fell apart. My identity fell apart, everything. And I paid every cost at every level, energetically, mentally, emotionally, everything, you know, psychologically attacked, all of that. But it didn't matter because to me, it was like, us finding out about our true power and what we can do with our bodies and our minds. And most importantly, that we have neighbors and they actually care about us and they want to get to know us. But there is like politics, galactic politics happening. It was just me feeling the need to speak my truth. And in speaking my truth, other people would feel empowered to speak theirs and step out and not have to be in this box and not be afraid of getting retaliated against, losing their jobs, etc. Like, we need to normalize the fact that a lot of people are gifted, that a lot of people are contactees, and that a lot of people are just curious beings who are really open to the possibility of something beyond. And why should we hide that, right? So that's it for me. Although he approaches it from like a political and like more grounded perspective. For me, I approach it from here. It's like like from the sky. I don't know how to say it. He grounds me and I kind of bring him up. I'm like, let's go fly.
Yeah, we have this kind of, that's why I think we work well together on this, is because we balance each other out.
Yeah.
An interesting story, I don't think we've probably told this publicly, so you'll get a scoop here, but the day we met, which was about a year ago last month, was the day that...
Is it really a year ago?
Yeah, April 2024, yeah.
Feels like decades at this point. My God.
That was it was in the same room with Lou Elizondo at a fundraiser in DC for the New Paradigm Institute, and it was the first time Boutaina had ever heard of Lou. I was there like a fanboy, through like connections I had made in the DC area, and she had met Jim Garrison, like she said earlier, so she was there, and
he invited me. And at this point, I'm like channeling blue avians to him, and he's like, "I'm holding space for
Jim
you."
Garrison, not Lou Elizondo.
Jim Garrison, yeah. And he's like, "Listen, we have this fundraiser if you want to come." And I was like, "Sure." And I wore this outfit where it was just so glittery, and I was like, I'm going to be the universe. Like, I'm going to this event. And I didn't know what I was walking into, like what they were really fundraising for and who Lou was or any of this political stuff. But I was like, there's a lot of activity. There are a lot of beings watching this. And everyone's like, okay. And I'm like, they're saying do a good job. You're doing a great job. I was just channeling these beings to like some people there. They were like, that's really wonderful. Thank you for the support. Can you tell them we need more money?
Sounds about right.
Yeah, and that's how kind of we met.
Yeah.
And we started to share our experiences, and the rest is history.
Yeah, that was an interesting day, actually. I mean, I know there's like currently what's happening now on social media is all about like the Age of Disclosure film and like why hasn't that been released. That event was like the first place that I think Lou probably publicly addressed that film before it came out. It was a few months before his book came out, and it was a small group. There were probably 30 of us in there, and he laid out this like they had a plan to release this so it could actually make an impact and make a splash for disclosure. They wanted to have theatrical releases. They wanted to have like a media blitz around the release of this film. So I don't know what's happened since then, but just so the public knows that things had actually been planned in a seemingly positive way for this to actually move the needle for disclosure and maybe get politicians and the public to actually do something.
And a lot of positive hope is what I remember. It was just kind of like, listen, yes, there are challenges, but we're moving, the needle, we're pushing. And they've been doing it since. And they're not just heroes. They're true leaders. You know, it takes a lot to just say, you know what, I'm going to come out there and I'm just going to speak my truth and I'm going to do the work, and whatever the consequences are, I'm willing to pay them because it's not about me. That takes a lot of strength, you know, to kind of just walk through all of the constructs and just be like, screw it. We're going to do something new. And so in our own way, our podcast supports that, right? We're doing it in our own way, and you guys are doing it in your own way. And each one of us in our own lives are doing it. If you just show up for yourself that way and show up for your family and your friends and your community that way, you don't need to be getting headlines and doing world tours and writing books or all of that, but just you saying, you know what, I'm going to speak my truth, I'm going to sit in my truth, I'm going to be authentic, is a huge service to all of humanity. So like, don't discount every action, every thought. And great job.
And even some of these like public facing figures we've seen come up on the scene, like I've grown my network significantly in the DC area, even before we met. For example, like I've become friends with Rear Admiral Tim Gallaudet. I met him at the Soul Foundation event last fall. Actually, I met him at the hearing in DC that he testified at with Lou. And then we met again at the Soul Foundation and chatted. And I've hung out with him and his wife a few times here. And a lot of people don't see this like when you have personal interactions with these people, but man, this guy's like motivating factor for speaking out and doing what he's doing is so that people under him and people who were under him actually feel like they have the safe space and empowered to come out and share their experiences and stories. That is like the only reason that he tells us, like his close circle, why he's doing this. And every time like he hears from a sailor or something or someone in the Navy, an aviator, like come up with a story, he's excited like a little kid that like he helped this person come out and share their story to add to the body of data that we have on this. So just a shout out to Tim, because he's great. And like those networks that I've built and now Boutaina has become more a part of, they extend into academia, they extend to science. We have friends at the Division of Perceptual Studies at University of Virginia who have been studying parapsychology for over 50 years there. And these folks are studying consciousness from a neuroscientific and psychological perspective. And as we know, it's a huge part of these phenomena. And we're starting to have like collaborative groups taking place. There's a group in the UK called the Scientific and Medical Network. There's a group in Italy called the Pari Center. I see Pavel here. He's friends with their director as well. And these guys are all having discussions around consciousness. And in some cases, they had no idea about the connection with UAPs. And I have like my friends and I have been going to these events and these conferences with these groups and attending their meetings and trying to give them more exposure to this topic. And it's bearing fruits. Like we're slowly seeing it being discussed more and more in those circles as well.
And one more thing, from a general perspective, what we're all trying to build in our own little world and in our communities and online and across the globe, like by each entity, each person, each community doing their thing, we're all trying to work towards the same thing, which is safety. We all just want to feel safe to talk about our experiences, but most importantly, to push the boundaries that exist across all categories, whether that's science, math, spirituality, et cetera, et cetera. What we're all doing here is expanding the bubble in which we live so we can see more and be more. Because at the end of the day, it comes down to us just wanting to be more, because we know we're not just these little worker bees. Like we're more than that. And so that's what everyone is doing. They have these experiences, they're integrating them, and they're coming out and saying, we can do more with this. We're going to look into this. We're going to try to find physical evidence. And at the same time, while we're experiencing this, we're going to see how it connects to religion and spirituality and all this. At the end of the day, we're all talking about the same thing, which is we're trying to achieve safety. And we are exploring consciousness. What is really consciousness? What is its essence, right?
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, and regardless of how slow the government goes on the disclosure process, like, I think like what people can do who actually want to move the needle to both address the fear, but also from a more positivist like perspective to create more authenticity in how we have dialogue around experiences and around reality. It doesn't have to be through the government. I mean, there are great groups. I'm part of, for example, I'm part of Citizens for Disclosure. I run the Virginia chapter with my friend Young, which is under the NPI umbrella, the New Paradigm Institute. And we're pushing specifically for like a more grassroots popular approach to government disclosure. and to raise awareness that way. But I mean, like the work I've been doing with my friends behind the scenes, that's in with like scholarly groups and academic groups. And I have a friend who's a professor at a university, for example, that I just came across, a family friend, the other day. And I found out that he was into the UFO topic, and he had no idea that I was into it. And just the fact that we like connected and started talking about it now has created like whole new avenues for where this could go. So I would say to like people out there, like, don't be afraid to have these discussions, no matter how taboo and how awkward it may seem at first. Because I mean, you'll never know like if the person you're talking to is a closeted experiencer, and you'll never know if they're actually like interested enough in these topics and can actually push the envelope in ways that will move the needle. So.
And just like Psychoactivo podcast said, like the people are the disclosure. While I believe in people within the government, you know, pushing for that, I personally, this is my take it or leave it. I'm not going to sit there and depend on the entity that controls the narrative and tells me how to live to freaking lead disclosure. Like, sorry, by the people, for the people, like, get out. I'm in control here. You're working for me. And if you're not going to tell me the truth, then so be it. So what I started doing is, as uncomfortable as it was at the beginning, I started posting about my experiences on TikTok outside of the podcast. And I started it from a magic perspective, being a little witch, because that's more common. And then slowly I was like, let's talk about like ascension. And so I'm slowly like upping the game, and I found a lot of people that way, and I found a lot of experiencers, and we are still, of course, getting shut down online, but like I personally don't care. I found communities that way. I found discords, everything that way that I'm a part of. And to me, I'm not going to rely on the people that are in power. Like, they're just not going to hold any weight in my life. So for me, this is my recommendation to you, take it or leave it, for the audience. Don't rely on the government. Of course, keep pushing, but like,
hold them to account. You got to hold them to account.
Hold them to account and kick them to the curb. Like, kick them to the curb. Don't freaking vote for those guys. If anything, you should kick them out. Like, I don't like all these guys. They care about their constituents to a certain degree, but at the end of the day, the lobbying money is in their hands. So if you really want to take control, start boycotting the companies that are not doing anything about anything. Like, really, it's a grassroots movement. Like, I'm all for boycotting and whatnot. So know where your money goes, because that's very important. Pay attention to the money game. Every penny that you spend freaking matters. And then at the same time, talk to people in your life about your experiences. Share your experiences online, as uncomfortable as it gets. Get involved in so many different ways, but the most important way is to find out truly who you are. Like, that is the most like important thing that you can do, is figure out who you are and do it responsibly. Don't, blow up your life and like do a lot of psychedelics and that, and like go down a different route. Like, be responsible, but figure out who you are and what you stand for, and don't trust the government.
And I think that's the real disclosure, is the personal disclosure. I had posted this earlier. It's like it's not a process necessarily. It's not an event. It's personal. Like, and that kind of goes to like Anthony's point that he was talking about earlier about kind of taking a step back in terms of like analyzing your own experiences, right? So I think that's the real disclosure, is when you kind of like break that veil of reality, and then you kind of look at things on a more fractalized version of reality. And I totally agree with that. And I mean, I'm kind of where you're at too, where I'm like, I'm not really waiting, right? I mean, it's like Christian says all the time too, and Mac down there in the comments, it's like, we are all part of this disclosure, and this is it right here. Like, this conversation is the disclosure, in my opinion. But yeah, I mean, I get, we have to hold it.
I will add, like, we got to still pay attention to, and you kind of hinted at it, what's happening in the private sector. Like, it's not just the government.
Yes.
We
Agreed.
know a lot of this.
Private equity. Pay attention to those companies and their portfolios, and anything that goes into defense. That defense system is expanded and it goes into the dark realms, right? And not dark realms, but darker realms in that we can't see what's happening because it's functioning outside of the law.
Goes black. Yeah.
Private equity, pay attention. This is why it's very important. Like, you pay attention to what you're buying. Like, really pay attention to who you're giving your money to.
Yeah. So, yeah, exactly. And I mean, we saw, like, there was the UAP disclosure fund hearing or briefing that took place in Congress with some of the oversight committee earlier this month. I was there, and I'm friends with Anna Brady Estevez, who spoke there as part of the innovation panel. And I've had off the record discussions with her in the DC area, and she's made it clear, and she's doing an amazing job at like pushing the topic of UAPs and even human potential, like remote viewing, within her circles of, like, she was a program manager at the National Science Foundation. She ran this interagency working group that brought in folks from NASA, folks from the Air Force, various departments of DOD and the government, and private sector, venture capitalists and startups in biotech, in aerospace. And for like the way that she has started that discussion in those circles, she's made it so that disclosure has already happened for them. And she's literally said this to me, like disclosure has already happened for that group. So as a public, like, yeah, we can not care about what the government does and what these private groups are doing because it's a personal thing. But like I said before, it's both and. It shouldn't be either or. Like, you can't.
But don't wait on them for change to happen.
It's not about waiting on them, but it's about.
No, I get your point.
It's about
I totally get it.
That if we're not aware of what's going on in those circles, and if we don't let our voice be a part of that, then we're going to continue to allow the same systems of control and power that have been running things here to continue around this topic. And I don't want that personally.
Yeah. And I want to add.
I totally agree. Go ahead.
I want to add one thing. Disclosure, in the most respectful way, is not about other entities. It really isn't. Disclosure is a process about what the matrices that exist are. And they are all mind-driven, right? This is a quote-unquote psychological war. This is warfare, mental warfare, in that we have been put in these bubbles and we've been told a story about the way that we live and the way that we are. And we've just, all of these fabrications. And so when you're waking up and this veil is falling, what you're beginning to see is that the way that you were living is not organic to who you truly are, right? And all of these discussions that are happening are very important about the military industrial complex and about, our food system, for example, and whatnot. But what really matters is you taking control of your life, not from a place of fear, but a place of empowerment. You should know why you're working out, and you should be working out respectfully. Like, it matters. It really does matter. Like, your body needs it. You're an animal at the end of the day, but also you're not. What the food you're putting in your body is made from, right? What you're consuming. Why are you consuming the podcasts, the music and whatnot? How is it made? What's the process? Your job is to figure out the process, and don't kill yourself going down these rabbit holes of how things happen. But your job is to be informed because you want to be the healthiest version of you. Because at the end of the day, this is really what drives your reality. What you tell yourself is how you see the world. What is being told and what you consume at every level is how you see the world and you function in the world. And so if you're just walking around and you're like, I'm just going to be going to my 9 to 5 and I'm just going to mind my business and I'm just going to sit here and feel disempowered, I want to tell you that you're more than that, and that your body can do a lot more than that. And screw them. Like, that should be your spirit. Like, screw everyone that tells me I can't do things, right? Push the boundaries, like always up it a notch in your own life. Just always question authority. Don't sit there.
Yeah, like
question it.
Like with experiencers, I feel like experiences can be so traumatic, and oftentimes they are, and trauma is like this doorway to this new to just like obliterate a former concept of reality, to open the door for a new one. But oftentimes we get kind of stuck there, and it's such a important thing to realize that you're in a ripe position to really be like a revolutionary as an experiencer and as someone in these circles. We just have to sometimes like get off our asses and
be your own hero in your own story. Don't wait for somebody to come save you. Save yourself, you know, get up and save yourself and do what you have to do. And don't struggle because there is no other way out. Like, find the most efficient way and get it done and show up for yourself. No one's coming to save you. I'm sorry. No one's coming to save us. We have to save ourselves. And it starts with us making that decision for ourselves and supporting others that need it. But you can't support others if you can't support yourself, right? And so support you. Also, listen to frequency music. It really matters. It's going to really help you mentally. Listen to subliminal like messaging around whatever it is that you need to work on. It really, really helps. This is a very intense time. And especially if you're consuming a lot on social media and the news and whatnot, just make sure that you're taking care of yourself in other ways. Okay.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
I'm like the mother, like, do this. But it really helped me get out of that space after my most traumatic experiences of being psychically attacked.
No, yeah, that's the balance, right, of life in general. And I did kind of want to throw it back to what Anthony was saying about, you know, like putting whatever private sector, government, like putting them on blast. I think that is actually a good point to make, especially when, you know, all of our taxpayer money is going to a lot of the funding for that. And I'm over here, you know, buying eggs for like $8 with 3 kids. And, you know, I don't have a Tic Tac in my backyard from Lockheed Martin. You know what I mean? So come on, bust it out. Share your tech. Give us some cool shit. You know what I mean? So no, I totally agree. There's a lot of elements to this, especially with what you're saying too, as well, Boutaina, about like kind of keeping yourself conscious of the reality around you, right? And that takes a lot of self-consideration, like you said, kind of boosting yourself up. So no, I actually really respect both aspects of how you guys are explaining that. So I really appreciate that. But I did want to ask Christian if he had any ending words here as we're closing out for the night. Christian, what do you got for us, man?
I just liked everything that I heard. Well, this is, I mean, you know, I've been saying this since I got to the platform, Paul. A lot of it, you know what I mean? About, you know, the first thing you have to do in this world is know yourself. That's it. If you don't know who you are, you're just dumping everything on everyone else all the time forever. Totally. If you don't understand what your decisions are, right, where they come from, and what sort of effect they might have, even on the smallest scale, is extremely important.
Yeah.
You have to start thinking in that regard. So I appreciated that very much. And I'm right there with you guys on the government aspect as well. And no one is going to come and save you. The only person that's responsible for you in this life is you and you alone. Full stop. And as soon as people start understanding that, the better off they're going to start being. And that means stopping listening to people telling you that you're a victim. You know what I mean? And things like that. You have to do the spiritual alchemy. You have to do the work. You have to be able to transmute these things so you can come to a better place. So that way you're perpetuating those positive vibrations that, you know, we've all been talking about here tonight. Excellent. This was wonderful. I didn't even have to say anything. You guys said it all for me.
Yep, agreed.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Thank
you guys
you.
made it easy for us.
Thanks. Yeah,
Thank
just
you.
check out. I want to just like a little promotion. So check out. We just released
Plug it.
a new series that we're going to be doing called "The Old Gods and Goddesses" with some experiencer friend of ours. Some of them are known in the community. Mac right there just commented. He's part of that group as well. We couldn't get him on this panel, but it's gonna be a recurring series, and we're gonna have some others come on, and each one's probably gonna be topical, and we'll probably have a few different series start up as well on our show because we like the way it went.
Yeah. We'll cover different realms as well.
Yeah, I saw that, and I saw that Mac was a part of that. Great friend of the show. We love him. He's one of our best buddies in this community. So really glad to
great.
see that you guys are joining
Shout out
up
to
with him.
Pavel as well from Stico Activo.
And Pavel.
He's there too.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely love Pavel. He's so based, man. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Who else are you gonna get like just legitimate, straightforward, nuanced content, right? So I love that guy, man. Totally.
Yeah.
But I just want to say, closing out here, both of you guys, I appreciate you so much. Christian, thanks for co-hosting tonight. Everybody in the chat, this was sick. Go check out Obliterate the Construct. They got new episodes coming out. All their stuff's going to be down there. And everybody, yeah, thanks again for joining the Portal Room. Have a good night and peace. Have
See
a
you
good
at
one.
Contact if you'll be there. I'll be at Contact. See you there.
Peace.